I've been out of the loop for Battlefield for a while, primarily because I'm a COD content creator, but I thought it'd be worth checking out Jack Fragg's video talking about all the different various things coming with the new version of Battlefield, kind of get a little bit of insight of what's going on.
What you're looking at here might be the first glimpse of what guns are going to look like, animations, and gameplay mechanics in the new Battlefield game. A couple days ago, EA announced the new game is going to be modern in a huge interview with Vince Ampella from Respawn. However, yesterday EA had something called an Investors Day, and this was a 3-hour presentation, and in that presentation the new battle
I had no clue that it was a 3-hour presentation. I thought people just mentioned, hey, there's some free-to-play or battle royale. I don't know. We're gonna get into all of it, but I'm surprised he was able to consolidate 3 hours down to 11 minutes.
Battlefield game was mentioned several times. They showed 2 new pieces of concept art, this footage here, which we'll get into in a second.
So it obviously looks like when they're shooting the stuff, certain parts of the environment get destructible, which is kind of a staple in Battlefield. I wish COD would try to incorporate more of those types of things when it makes sense, obviously. But
and there was a load more details about the game and when we're going to potentially be able to play it. And this was really surprising. I did not expect it to be so soon. The context of the video you're seeing here is that hypothetically, a user has generated a level using a new EA tool, and they're running around on it playing a 1v1 deathmatch against a friend.
That's a huge map.
They showed this, and I think this is running on the Frostbite engine, and these are assets and animations from the new Battlefield. EA don't have any other modern military FPS games. These aren't models that are in BF 2042 as far as I know. So why would they bother building this all from scratch when they can just take it from the new game that they're building?
There goes, it blew up.
The weapons themselves, we've got an M4 with some delineation there, maybe an M4A1, and what looks like an 870 shotgun. Incredibly highly detailed models. I love the scuffs and scratches on them, and this seems to fit with the gritty BF3 BF4 vibe that Battlefield announced a couple days ago. We see a grenade being thrown to at some point, a little bit of destruction, but something to note about the animations here. I don't know if anyone's picked up on this, and it might just be that it's not in this particular instance of the game that they were playing here, but when the characters are sprinting, they're not tactical sprinting. Tactical sprinting, that's in 2042. It's a faster sprint where you put your gun up and you run really quick.
Kind of like how COD has it.
That says to me that this could be a gameplay choice because, as I mentioned, they're trying to go back to that BF3, BF4 feel. A bit slower paced, a bit heavier and weightier.
I'm not really sure because, like I said, I'm not a huge Battlefield enthusiast. I feel like the oldest Battlefields are probably the better ones, and they've kind of made a lot of, you know, problems along the way. I like score streaks. Obviously Battlefield doesn't have those. They have vehicles and all these other things. But were those some good Battlefields like 3 and 4? Like I only play usually for about maybe 20 to 30 hours of playtime. And then usually the next COD I'm on it because they don't come out annually. They come out once every 3-4 years or however long they come out.
It makes me think about Portal too. Are they going to integrate this kind of technology into Portal where if you want to, there's an option that you can just describe something and it will take its best shot at building it. And
AI.
then you
fine tune it.
Whatever. So that's the first new thing that we saw. The second thing, 2 pieces of concept art. I'm going to look at these now. This is the first one. I got this from the EA Investors Call website. The whole
it looks pretty realistic.
And you can download the individual.
Obviously, they're highlighting the specific studios, but in terms of graphical fidelity, I mean, it looks fairly real, like what you would imagine these things look like.
JPEGs and PNGs and video files, whatever. It's all on there. And immediately, I'm looking at this thinking, okay, it's giving me Black Hawk Down vibes. It's giving me Strike at Karkand, maybe a bit of Gulf of Oman. Got a soldier here with a weapon, helicopter landing, soldier underneath, smoke plumes, some kind of sandbag reinforced window here with lots of destruction. Love seeing that. Could just be
half the building's broken.
Maybe there's some kind of build back mechanic in the game. You know how we had fortifications in BF5? If something's destroyed, perhaps you can add a bit of cover to it, like sandbags. The helicopter here, I think it's a UH-60. It kind of looks weird though. I don't know, are these like landing supports or something? They might have some copyright issues and they can't make it look exactly the same, but from the front it kind of looks like a UH-60, just a bit weird. But as Vince was talking about when he did that interview with IGN, this looks like a dense urban environment, which he mentioned several times, and I think a lot of people want this kind of Battlefield game back with this type of map design. So this is definitely leaning in the right direction in my opinion. This was the
my favorite thing to do in Battlefield was always just to snipe, because you can get that unique experience of sniping in a Battlefield game that COD just can't replicate. Obviously it's more arcadey when it comes to COD, but to be able to like line up a target from like 2,000 meters and then you watch the tracer go and drop and you have to lead it by a huge amount and all. Like those kind of things are super fun with the scale of the maps they had, but I never really enjoyed like the tanks and helicopters and planes, especially if you were in a lobby with somebody who was god tier at those things. They weren't dying in those things.
Second one that they showed that we've not seen before, just big picture. We've got some
huge
tanks,
map.
we've got some jets here. So jets confirmed perhaps for the next game. Some more tanks in the
yeah, those look like tanks. Initially, I thought those were almost like the silo openings.
Urban environment over here. And what looks like missiles being fired into the sky. I'm not sure what this was. It kind of looks like MLRS. You know, the thing that the missiles come out of. But
yeah, it kind of does.
Angle, so
but it's like
wreckage or
a weird,
the remainder of a house or truck or something. I'm not sure. But it could be artillery. But based on what they were saying about the multiplayer maps being smaller and more dense, I would assume that this is from campaign. Because this area here, this massive open plain, that's not good for a Battlefield map, is it? That's terrible. You recall BF3 as well. It had a level called Thunder Run, where you played as Captain Miller. And you had the dinosaur, and you control the M1 Abrams, and you go across the desert, and you attack a couple of positions. Eventually, you end up in a town. It might be that this is a single-player level that has a similar kind of vibe to that, where you're a tank commander. I'm not sure if this is multiplayer. Don't think it is, but tanks look
It's too
cool.
hard to tell from the
Missiles
image.
streaking into the sky is a big explosion.
It does look pretty cool.
Perhaps there'll be some kind of call-ins in the multiplayer. You know how we had the V1s in BF5 that you could call in and make some giant explosions, artillery, that kind of thing. Perhaps that's back.
That was like the
Huge
equivalent of the nuke streak, right?
Good
I don't really remember now.
Explosions, who knows? The next news, I think, is arguably the most important thing because I think that it signals a change in philosophy for the Battlefield franchise, a change in management, a change in how they're going forward with things, especially starting with this game. Yes, it's just words. Yes, these are for investors. Don't pre-order, all that stuff. But this next bit is important because it's regarding when you're going to be able to play the game, test it, feedback, community involvement, and it sounds like
what's funny about this is I feel like this mirrors the MW2 year with IW for Call of Duty. Obviously, Call of Duty changes studio to studio to studio, and that's why they're able to pump out a new game every year because essentially the one game working on it has had anywhere between 18 months to up to 4 years like we had with the Black Ops 6. So a lot of times what they did is they ended up putting out a product that they feel like the market needs or wants, and it doesn't necessarily resonate with their core audience. And it might sell well initially, but the core audience that you're trying to attract and bring in new players the game doesn't have that longevity. And that's what kind of happened with some of the Battlefield mistakes that we've had over the past few examples that we've had where it came out and people didn't like the specialists or they didn't like the characters or the maps or the spawns or that there was AI and all these other things. And it seems like they're giving the players what they're not asking for and kind of ignoring the stuff that they are asking for. And that is even somebody from the outside looking in. I was fortunate enough to play Battlefield, the most recent one, early. I didn't like it right from the get-go. I didn't really expect to like it, but I think there's things that they can do that are just make a good quality game that's fun to play. And when I played it, I didn't get that feel from it, even though I'm not typically a huge fan of it. There's tons of games that I could just jump on and play. And I think they went through that little bit of a bubble where a lot of where I was fortunate for COD because a lot of the Battlefield refugees essentially came over to COD, and we see content creators switch over to support Warzone while it was going on, and hopefully we're seeing like a little bit of a balance because then that gives competition to Call of Duty, which I think is one of the most valuable things for the players because then everyone wins. Because then if the next Battlefield is a good game, their players are happy, and Call of Duty has to step up the game so they don't lose those players because even though I might prefer Call of Duty games, there's a little bit of overlap when it comes to first-person shooters and what people are looking for. And it's just really about making a good game that makes the core audience happy while still being able to attract new players. Modern Warfare 2 didn't really do a good job of that. In the recent Battlefield, a couple of them didn't really do a good job of that. I don't think, at least from the outside and from memory. But we'll continue.
Like it's going to be pretty soon. Here's what Byron Beatty said. That's the guy on the screen now. And he is the group general manager for Battlefield.
Our teams live via a culture of rapid iteration to find great gameplay. That's Vince's hallmark. prototyping, play testing, getting feedback, and repeating that loop over and over and over again. It's one of our most fundamental philosophies, and it's being incorporated through every area of Battlefield. We're obsessed with finding the fun. Now, I would love to show you what we've been working on.
And as someone who's been to the Call of Duty ones where you sit in on these meetings, it felt like there was a drastic shift, especially with this Black Ops 6 and even MW3 part of that, where the studios were taking ownership and trying to get back to the core fundamentals of why people play a Call of Duty game and why people play a Battlefield game, right? That's kind of the general feel this is giving off. And I wasn't at the other Battlefield one, so I wouldn't know.
With Battlefield, we have a philosophy on Battlefield to put our community first. But what you can be sure of is we're building a connected universe set in the modern day for players filled with Battlefield experiences, all of them built with our unique DNA. I also want to share with you that internally, we've been playing the game nearly daily for well over a year. In support of this playtesting, we've also prioritized what we call our Keep Green initiative.
I know I keep pausing, and that's probably going to piss people off, but I got to get these points out while they're talking about it. This goes unnoticed a big time, is that the developers playing their actual games. And I know that you would think that this is common sense in the industry, but I don't think this happens often enough. And I know from when we got a chance to talk to different people, they're not always playing the game. When it came to the Black Ops 6, they were like, we have the servers open so we can play it on our weekends. And everyone knows that, hey, we get to jump in there and we get to play each other. We hop on and there's enough of the devs on so they could just get in to a lobby with each other randomly within those windows of time. So it makes a lot of sense when you have people who play their game. You can notice and spot the problems immediately, both as a developer and as a player, because some things you're like, this should just work better. And it's happened in Call of Duty before. We're like, this is so common sense. You literally would have had to not play the game to not realize that this is an issue. And that solves, like, I would say, the vast majority of issues. But we'll go ahead and continue. Sorry, hopefully we don't need to pause again.
This means we're focused on software stability so that the game is always playable, always available for play testing. That means for us more iteration cycles. In addition to this internal testing cycles, we're already testing with players. And we plan to introduce a new large-scale community-driven testing program early next year.
That's a W.
Now that's going to give us significantly more feedback on gameplay, performance, and fun factor.
So a couple things to unpack there. The biggest, obviously, early next year, January, February, that's what early next year is to me. They're going to be running large-scale,
usually first quarter, so January to March
testing. This is really interesting to me because it sounds kind of like the CTE, which we had for BF4. And there's no doubt that the CTE, the community test environment, helped turn that game around. I seem to recall they did it a little bit with Hardline as well, maybe some BF1 too. However, they've not done anything like it since, and nothing on the same scale that the BF4 CTE
so
was.
It clearly
and
worked.
More importantly, they've never done it before releasing the base game. That seems like the difference here, and this seems super early in general, right? Typically, they announce the new game in May or June, there's a beta in September, and then it releases at the end of October or November. That's how most of the Battlefield releases have worked from my memory. So it's a pretty quick turnaround from reveal to release, just a few months. And most of the time, betas, let's be honest, they're just demos. Yeah, they get data from them, but nothing significant really ever changes, right, from beta to release, if it's just
especially when it's too close. Yeah.
So this community testing going out there early next year, and there's not even a release date for the game yet. That says to me that they're pretty confident about the product that eventually they'll put on the shelves and sell.
To add to that, why they would be pretty confident is because if it's bad and they let people play it early, that information will get out quickly and people will already write off the game before ever having a chance to get exposed to it. Because this will be a very limited play pool. It'll probably be very select, probably creators, especially like Jack Frags and a lot of people he plays with that cover Battlefield for many years. They'll be all part of that, I'm sure, as well as a bunch of other creators if they're trying to expand, get different perspectives. So there is that part of it, which hopefully it's a good thing for them. And it allows them to get a lot of the kinks out.
But it also shows that they're willing to be more transparent, take on some critical feedback, and make sure that by the time this game releases, if it is October, November next year, hopefully this community testing program has been running.
You'll lead to one of the best Battlefields probably ever.
Fixed
You do it right.
Breaking issues, sorted out any glaring balance concerns with the game, and in theory, because of that, the game will be good to go on launch. And hopefully, it makes a strong first impression. I think they know now that they can't mess this up. This is one of the last chances that Battlefield is going to have. So I'm impressed that they've changed how they operate and they're actually doing this. I think that's cool, and it feels different to the last few releases at least.
To add to this also ends up being like the MW3 thing for Call of Duty, is we got the best probably post-launch content like schedule that we've ever had in Call of Duty history. And this was essentially them making up for last year being a down year. Just same way Battlefield's kind of had that down cycle where they kind of had a lot of issues. They overpromised, underdelivered. A lot of those things get kind of squashed out. And knowing that they have to deliver even higher stakes to kind of recoup the loss, then you're going to end up with an even better product and more content on top of that. Otherwise, this is essentially, like he says, kind of their last chance, because got me once, shame on you. Got me twice, shame on me. And I don't think most people want to go around that the second time, third time, fourth time.
Though, I don't know. As I always say, the proof is in the pudding. They've got to
exactly.
Aside from that, there was even more new information about the game. There are 4 studios working on it. We already knew that. They do go into more detail about what exactly each of those studios is doing. So DICE, they're the creators of Battlefield, and they're going to be leading the charge on multiplayer. Criterion Games, they're going to be working on content and experiences for single player and multiplayer. They also said that Criterion Games are now a fully integrated studio for Battlefield. Motive, they've got a history in single player and storytelling, so I assume they're just going to be campaign. And then Ripple Effect, which used to be DICE LA, they're working on this new Battlefield experience fueled by the Battlefield DNA, they say, and apparently it's testing well with players. It's easy to assume that that's going to be a battle royale. And then there were some stats thrown into.
So that's the interesting part there, is if they come out with the battle royale, even better. Hopefully it's good. I know a lot of people think a game has to come out with the battle royale to be successful, but the odds are it's really hard to have a good battle royale. More often than not, there's probably about 10 battle royales, 15 battle royales, maybe even 20 battle royales that drop in a given window, and only one of them is probably good. Between Fortnite, Apex, Call of Duty Warzone, there's not that many battle royales that came out in that span that were actually good. Look up how many battle royales came out in that window, because everyone got the fever from Fortnite, so we can monetize this, make some money, which many can, but many did fail. They wasted all those efforts in developing battle royales, and it's not enough to have a battle royale. You have to have a good battle royale with a good and fun gameplay loop. And then once you get into the nuts and bolts, you need a game that's fun to play, some kind of anti-cheat to help with that problem, because that's going to be part of the problem of any online multiplayer game. And those are things that they'll have to address when it's time.
Into the mix as well, if you're interested in these. Battlefield as a franchise has over 5 billion hours played now, 100 million players, and over the past 12 months, Battlefield experiences have been played for a total of 250 million hours. Aside from that, at the end of this presentation, there was a Q&A. I watched the whole 3 hours. I did have a bit of time to burn last night. And there was one question about Battlefield, and Laura Miele answered that. To summarize, she said that she thought it was the right time for the potential in the Battlefield franchise right now. The interest and demand in the shooter market is very strong in how it's evolved and changed. People are looking for these massive scale battles instead, bigger maps with vehicles involved too. And she said that Battlefield meshes well with that. And if they continue to invest in the right places with the focused development of the game, they'll be able to maximize the potential of the brand. So there it is. That's everything.
That's all true
from the EA Investors Day yesterday. I don't think they've done anything like this before. I don't know if it'll be every quarter or once a year, something like that. But yeah, surprisingly, more BF news. It seems like they've hit us hard this week with the announcement and now this. I'm not expecting to hear much more soon though, unless they keep it going. They could do, but I imagine the next time we hear about this will be some kind of teaser, trailer, gameplay, that
hopefully
kind of
it's
thing.
soon. I mean, overall this is a pretty good video. Or check out Jack Frags. He's a Battlefield guy. I mean, he covers a lot of games, but he's definitely a Battlefield guy that's been covering that franchise for a while. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I think the only thing that I didn't hear in this that I had heard shared online was that the Battle Royale is supposed to be free to play, which I think is going to be huge, or the game as a whole is free to play. I don't know. You have to let me know in the comments. Appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.